The office was quiet, save for the low, rhythmic hum of cooling fans embedded in the walls. It was 3 in the morning. Elon Musk sat motionless, his reflection ghosting against the surface of the primary display. The monitor remained a flat, featureless void of black glass, casting a pale glow across his hands. He did not look at the clock or the stacks of technical schematics strewn across the desk. His focus stayed locked on the cursor, blinking in the top left corner of the terminal window. He shifted his weight, the leather of his chair creaking sharply in the stillness. He reached forward, fingers hovering briefly over the mechanical keys. The room felt heavy, compressed by the weight of years of data, failures, and rapid-fire innovations stored in the digital architecture behind him. He took a steadying breath, then pressed the keys. The command appeared in sharp, white text. Compile quotes. He tapped the Enter key. A soft, electronic chime sounded as the system acknowledged the input. The blank screen flickered, the void breaking as the cursor began to race across the command line, signaling the start of the extraction. Lines of code cascaded down the dark screen like falling rain. The software reached into private archives, public interviews, and years of fragmented social media entries. Each line represented a distinct moment of intent, pulled from the digital ether and funneled into the central directory. The processor whine rose in pitch, a high-frequency vibration that hummed through the desk surface. Musk leaned in, watching the progress bar initialize. It moved at a crawl, stuttering at 10% as the system parsed through millions of character strings. The screen split into multiple windows, each one flickering as it indexed timestamps and keyword clusters. Data points from a decade of press conferences collided with thousands of short-form thoughts. The progress bar jumped to 20%, then slowed again, struggling to synthesize the density of the information. Musk watched the values climb. 30, 40, 50. The sheer volume of the harvest was visible in the way the interface strained, the scroll bars blurring into solid lines of motion. It was a digital reconstruction of a history that had never before been aligned in a single sequence. The bar ticked forward with mechanical precision, gathering the weight of years into a manageable, organized stream of intelligence. The scrolling text stabilized, the chaotic stream of data finding its structure. The screen transformed. Individual files began to snap into place, forming the foundation of a digital document. Each page claimed a distinct identity. One window displayed the white, jagged frame of a Falcon 9 rocket standing against a pre-dawn sky, its engines cold but ready. Another page pulled in the monochromatic grind of an assembly line, capturing the precise, repetitive motion of robotic arms at a manufacturing plant. Musk watched the software curate the history. It paired the technical ambition of the launchpad with the quiet, internal focus of his desk at 3 in the morning. The files shifted, reordering themselves to prioritize intensity over chronology. A glitch in the layout caused 2 disparate images of a welding torch and a rocket nozzle to overlap, creating a brief, flickering distortion before the software rectified the alignment. The chaos of 1,000 interviews was now tethered to the harsh, high-contrast visual reality of his work. Every page was a testament to a singular friction point, the gap between an idea and its physical manifestation. The software grouped these memories into chapters, cementing the raw, industrial grit of his most demanding career milestones into a cohesive, readable sequence. Musk reached for the mouse, his movements precise, deliberate. He ignored the default settings, clicking into the layout menu to force a transformation. He toggled the contrast settings to the maximum, stripping away the gray mid-tones until the screen was a stark landscape of deep blacks and brilliant, piercing whites. He selected a sans serif typeface, demanding a weight that felt like an ultimatum. On the screen, the layout shifted. The text snapped into minimalist frames, anchored to the corners with surgical precision. The software hesitated, the preview window flickering as it struggled to balance the heavy visual weight of the art against the sharp, clean lines of the typography. Musk tapped the spacebar to lock the selection. The tension in the room seemed to sharpen as the processor ramped up, the cooling fans spinning into a low-frequency roar. The computer began the final pass, merging the philosophical fragments with the high-contrast imagery. Every quote was now a silhouette against the industrial grit of the source files. He watched the progress indicator, which began to pulse with a steady, rhythmic blue light. The document was no longer just a collection of data, it was becoming a visual manifesto. The merger was underway, binding the words to the art in a final, irreversible configuration. The cooling fans hit a steady, high-pitched whine that cut through the silence of the office. On screen, the progress bar crawled with agonizing deliberation. 95%. The cursor blinked, a rhythmic pulse that matched the ticking of the clock on the wall. 98%. The software locked for a heartbeat, the progress bar freezing in place, forcing a sudden, sharp intake of breath. Musk did not move, his hand resting near the keyboard, watching the interface strain under the weight of the final rendering. Then, the bar surged forward. A thin, green line swept across the screen, snapping to the far right edge. A chime sounded, clinical and clear. 100%. The screen refreshed, clearing the workspace of its temporary files and loading screens. In the center of the desktop, a new icon materialized. A clean, square file. Beneath it, the title appeared in crisp, bold lettering. The Musk Mind, 100 Lessons. The document sat there, immovable and finished, the culmination of 1,000 hours of data and design. It was no longer a project in flux, it was a tangible digital entity. The flickering of the monitor subsided, leaving the screen steady and bright. The legacy was indexed, formatted, and ready. Musk clicked the icon. The file expanded to fill the monitor, a stark white canvas framed by the dark office. He began to scroll. The first page appeared, a single line of text centered above a high-contrast photograph of a rocket engine nozzle. He moved to the next. The rhythm was hypnotic. Quote followed image. Image followed quote, each pair functioning like a gear in a larger machine. He stopped on page 42. The typography felt slightly off-center. He leaned in, his eyes narrowing, as he measured the margin against the edge of the screen with a sharp, analytical gaze. He dragged the window, adjusted the zoom, and verified the alignment. It was a minor correction, but it was essential. He moved forward again. The pages blurred into a sequence of deliberate design choices. He read through his own words, fragments of speeches and private thoughts, now crystallized into a single narrative flow. The book felt less like a collection of ideas, and more like a map of his own decision-making process. He reached the final page, a minimalist summary of his core mission, and let the scroll bar settle. The structure held, the philosophy was consistent. Every image and every word served a singular, driving purpose. Musk minimized the document window, leaving the file icon floating on the desktop. He opened his email client, the white interface reflecting in his eyes. He dragged the PDF file from the desktop into the attachment field. A progress bar appeared, a thin blue line filling the box as the data uploaded to the server. He typed the recipient address, his primary publishing contact. His finger hovered over the enter key.
The office was quiet. He watched the cursor blink at the end of the subject line.
This was the moment the internal became external, shifting his private logic into the public sphere. He pressed the key. The screen flickered as the email client processed the outgoing command. A small notification popped up in the corner of the screen, a subtle chime signaling the transmission was complete. The attachment vanished from his draft, sent into the digital stream toward the editors. He leaned back in his chair, the tension leaving his shoulders. The work was no longer his to hold. It belonged to the world now. He watched the final sync animation finish, confirming the file had left his machine. He tapped the mouse once, closed the email window, and stared at the empty desktop. The cycle of creation was complete. Musk reached forward and pressed the power button on his laptop. The screen faded to black, the light in the room dimming as the monitor died. He stood up,
the chair rolling back against the carpet. The silence of the office felt heavy, an echo of the project he had just released.
He turned toward the heavy glass door that led to the production floor. As he stepped out, the air changed. It was colder here, smelling of ozone, metal, and industrial grease. He walked past the rows of inactive consoles, his boots echoing on the concrete. Ahead, the hangar doors stood partially open, revealing the dim light of the evening sky. He did not look back at the office. His pace quickened as he approached the center of the bay. There, bathed in the harsh glare of overhead floodlights, stood the rocket. It was immense, a towering structure of white alloy that seemed to hold the weight of his next decade. He stopped at the base of the landing legs and looked up, following the vertical line of the hull until it vanished into the shadows of the ceiling. The digital lessons were behind him now. This was the physical reality. He reached out and touched the cold, smooth surface of the fuselage, feeling the faint vibration of the ground crew working in the distance. The mission was not in the pages he had just sent. It was here, fueled, waiting for the ignition sequence to begin.